are in the final lesson of this series on formatting. And this time we're going to look at graphics and wrap up our project and see what the end result is. So I'm going to give you a preview of where we're going with this. When we first started out in the very first lesson, we took some financial data, natively went through this and said, this is what it looked like. And what we're going to end up with at the end of this lesson is a report that looks like this, that is also, I want to say, exportable, or we can at this point copy it to our clipboard and paste it into Excel and be able to work with this. So this is a lot to cover again in this lesson. We have a lot of things to go over. Mainly, we are going to look at adding buttons to our report, adding some icons, and an image that we can do something with. And then, of course, I've talked about this before, but I'm going to show you guys some examples of conditional formatting where we're going to change the colors and the icons depending on the rules of the data. And because it's the report, I'm trying to get you guys to be interested in data tables and have some, more advanced topics coming on as a sneak preview to maybe a future lesson. We're going to look at adding some row grouping, changing the column visibility and how you would do that. We're going to copy the data and export it to a file. And then I have a couple more examples of what we can do with buttons. So stick around with this lesson. We have a couple new things that I had to update in the demo file. So be aware of that if you need to download a new file. I'm adding a new field to the columns builder called default content, and I'll try to explain why I needed to do that when we get into the demo file. And then updated a calculation that relied on that field, and updated the UI that now has that field visible to you so that we can use it. And then I also found a bug when I was working with my file to get this prep that I just wanted to make sure you were aware of. So in the delete icon, there was a bug with that. So get your newest demo file and we can go ahead and look at that. So I think we're going to hop over into the demo file and start getting ready to improve our financial reports that looks like something our stakeholders would want to use. Hey everyone, we're in the demo file 5.5, formatting with graphics. Let's hit quick start. Okay, we should be on our last report, 5.4b, and let's do our normal process of taking an action to duplicate the record. I'm going to forewarn you, in this series, there's a lot to cover, so I'm breaking this into multiple parts. So let's label this one part 1, and then we are going to say formatting with graphics. Okay, extra space there, and submit this and close. So the first thing we're going to do is rearrange our view a little bit, because I want year to be moved over and I want account, basically those two to swap. So let's go ahead and we do that by going into our columns builder. Okay, when we open this up, I want to say, hey, let's move year to position 1, and let's go ahead and do that. And then we want the business unit to come right behind that. I usually hit resequence list just to verify that everything is correct. Year, business account, and then the months. And to point out, I've added this little feature here for the index columns to basically tell you, hey, this is year is now index 0, scenario, business unit is 1. So let's go ahead and submit our changes and return to our view and see what happens there. Okay, things aren't quite looking right. Year is not even visible, and it's showing other information. I wanted to point this out because we have to remember that when we use the column definitions in JS function as such here, they're hard-coded. Even though we use the builder to change the order, we did not come back here and update that. So be very careful. So what I know we did is this year used to be in position 2 and we moved it to 0. So let's go ahead and change that. And since this is no longer in 0, we swapped it. This is actually now in position 2. For cosmetic reasons, I like to keep myself organized. So let's go ahead and put those in the order that they see. So we should have the 0 is, we should believe is the year, and that should be centered. And then the second index, which is the concatenated result, should be in there. Let's go see if we've corrected it. Okay, that looks better. Year's there, our business unit is here, and our account ABF is in the position. Everything's in the correct positions now with the right index. However, I have some issues with formatting. I don't love that this is wrapping, and that if you look at some of these financials, they're also wrapping. So let's go take care of that by adding a new class that is native to DataTables and or Bootstrap. So what we're going to do in this case is we're going to add a class name to this target. Let's just put it right underneath before the render function. It's called text no wrap. And then I've also added to format that to the right. And I'm going to do the same thing here with the currencies. And let's go ahead and put that here. So what we're saying is, don't wrap this at all. That's native, and format it to the right. I do want to point out, though, that we actually moved our fields and we do not need position 15 now. Our months only go up to 14 on our index. Let's take a peek at that. Okay, do you see how the wrapping no longer exists? We can scroll the way over. I've added the right, but there seems to be a lot of extra padding here. Good, bad, or indifferent. But let's go ahead and change that. And I'm not positive that I need to have the year be with a background anymore. So we're also going to toggle that off. In order to do that, we go to our CSS, we go down to our custom section, and under the right, instead of using a one-dimensional EM, we're going to use 0.4 to reduce the size of the padding on the right side. And in the center, let's just remove the background color. And let's see what that looks like. The center is removed with the background color, and the padding has reduced. I think that looks better. It's not right up against the line, but it's not so much padding that it's extra. We also see here that the business unit is kind of left aligned, but we don't have anywhere to format that. Now we could go back into columns builder and do it there, but for purposes of this lesson, why don't we just take and copy this feature here and make sure that we say the target is 1. Let's go see what that looks like. All right, but do you see up here how the business unit is actually wrapping on the top, but not there? I don't like that either. So let's actually go and say text no wrap here and add that to our feature right now. So we have text no wrap with the center on target 1. What does that look like? Notice how we can force the top to not also wrap. So I think this is looking pretty good. All right, there's a couple more things we're going to do. One is we're going to just reduce the font size of this overall body. By doing that, we simply go into our CSS tab. I'm going to reduce it from 9 point to 8 point, and just let's go see what that looks like. Okay, things are shrinking up a little bit, but my header is still larger than the rest. I don't think we need to do that in this report. So where do we change that? Remember, this is the style for my header. So back in CSS, we're in here. And if you notice, I actually have those two. I forgot to remove this. It's unnecessary because this will overwrite it and it can get confusing. So let's just delete that. And where it says font size 10 important, for our purposes, we're just going to disable that and see what happens. All right, I think that looks better. We kept our padding around here, but the font size now has reduced, and I think things are looking okay here. But for cosmetics, one thing we could do is maybe improve the way this, column striping looks. We talked that we have the ability to do that, but we haven't shown you actually how to change the colors. And part of the advantage of this is I'm going to show you another trick that you can do with styling, where we can create a variable. So let's go into our CSS, and we're going to add a thing called root. And I don't know positively if this is a DataTables or a Bootstrap feature, but I'm going to paste here that in here on this custom class section, I have decided to create a variable called my theme color. And what I've done here is just put a hex value in for the, like in FileMaker, we set a variable and saying use this for this. This is the structure that we do for that. But what I want to point out is instead of hard coding my background color here, I want to change it to use a variable. And so what I do is I'm going to take and just replace this background color hard coded thing with my new variable at the top. And the way you do that is use a var with open parentheses, and then you reference your name here. So I changed the background color of my header, but nothing changed. Okay. What I want to point out though is that it actually is doing this. If I just simply remove that and type the word red in there, remember, I only changed my variable name. I didn't change it down here. Now, if I go to preview, it's that simple. So this is an easy way to declare your variables at the top and change the color of your theme for, a different client or stakeholder, or let the user choose that in the future if they wanted to too. But let's go back and change that red back to our value. And I'm just going to take this line of background color here and see. I know I've used it somewhere else. I've used it in my active item link. So let's also replace that. So I want to get rid of any time I've hard coded that hex color, and I don't see any more at this moment. Okay, so the next step we talked about was changing this every other row. Well, the way we do that is by changing or adding a new class, and these are basically one way to do it. There are other ways to do it, but I'm just going to show you the way that I think is a little bit easier to learn. So under this custom classes for tables, let's head down to right below this page link. And this is the new code that I want you to add. What we're talking about is saying for the table, data tables body, for each odd row right here, that feature, I want my background color to be my variable color. And then for every even row, I want it to be white. So if you wanted to toggle, you guys can understand how to do that. Let's go see what that looks like. Okay, it's working, but I think it's a little harsh. So the way we can adjust this is I'm going to show you, let's go ahead and add into our variables here at the theme color. I'm going to add in 2 new variables, and you can see them here. And they basically look different. But what I'm trying to tell you is that my naming convention is that I'm using my theme color, and I'm adding a 20% transparency. And in this one, I'm adding a 40% transparency. And the only way that I know by just doing Google research is that I've added these codes at the bottom. So instead of using our odd row as the color, let's go ahead and change it right now to the 40T and see what that looks like. 40% transparency. When I preview it, it's pretty good, right? I can see that it lightened it, but I'm going to just even lighten it a little bit further to show you guys what that looks like. So let's just finish this up by changing this to the 20% transparency variable that I created. And now it's even a little bit more calm. I think that looks pretty good. Let's see, is there anything else that we need to modify here? I think it's looking pretty good. One thing I'm not sure that we need to do, and let me prove here, like if we showed all records, what isn't very user-friendly is the fact that my button at the top here isn't sticking. So in order to do that, we need to add a library to force that to stay. So let's go into our libraries area, and we're going to paste this script that we need in order for JavaScript to respond to keeping that header there. And it's the fixed header. We've had this in other lessons, but for purposes of here, I'm re-adding it so that you guys remember when we want things to change, we can scroll. But like, I can't tell here that that's actually happening is because I have my default set to 10 entries. So let's go change that to be a little bit larger so that we can ensure that our function works. So we go to JS function, we hit this integration settings. And remember, we do this right here on page length unload. Let's just change it to 50 for our purposes. And this is the fixed header that we just added a library for. Just ensure that that's set to true before we leave. And when we go back to our report, we now say 50 records and we have a scrollable bar. We want to ensure that this fixed header stays there. And it does. Okay, so we have a pretty decent looking report. We're going to stop at this point because this is actually a report that somebody could use. And the next lesson, we're going to just look at adding some buttons to our report and putting those CSS styling elements to it. And we're going to do a couple advanced features where we're going to group some columns and look at how to do that. So join me in the part 2 series of this next lesson, and we will continue on from there.